Hello, everyone. Eric Hörst here, back with episode number 51 of Training Café. It's Monday, November 22nd. And if you're new to the cafe, well, we meet here every other Monday at noon Eastern. And we sip coffee together. We talk training, we talk climbing. I share my wisdom, my 45 years of climbing experience, 30 years of coaching experience, and try to inspire you and inform you and help you train smarter in the gym and climb harder outside. So that's what you are here for when you attend the Training Cafe. Each episode, we have kind of a main topic. Today, I'm going to talk about end of season assessment and reflection and planning for the future, something I'm going through right now. I just finished my outdoor climbing season, and it's cold and cloudy and windy here in Pennsylvania, so I'm shifting to winter training mode for a bit, and it's nice to have a plan. So I'll talk to you a bit about that. And every episode, we do a couple of things. First of all, we sip coffee together. In fact, let's do that right now. Climbers around the world, unite. We commune over coffee. We sip together. And what is Coach Hörst drinking today? Well, special holiday edition Send Blend. It's a medium dark roast. We have it specially brewed for my company PhysiVantage as a fun little holiday gift. I'm a coffee aficionado, so this is our second year doing Send Blend. You can pick up a pound of Send Blend. It tastes good. It's a good, interesting, fun gift for a climbing friend, partner, to send them a bag of Send Blend for Christmas. And visit PhysiVantage.com and you can pick up a bag. So the other thing we do, besides sip coffee together, is every episode I give a shout out. And this shout out, Alex Megos, looks like he sent another 515C. So this would be perhaps his third route of the grade, maybe fourth. I don't think anybody on the planet's climbed more 515Cs. I mean, Andra's done certainly 3 or 4. That's for sure. They are, the top of the male climbing category, I guess you would say, outdoor climbing category. And Alex did a new link up, or did the second ascent of a link up in Spain. And it was the guy who did the first ascent graded at 15C, and it sounds like it took Alex quite a bit of time. So, it's a short, powerful, crimpy route that he probably did in just a few minutes, because that's kind of the nature of these hard, steep, small hold routes is, unless there's a knee bar or a good rest, there's no time to hang around and recover. So it's a real test of climber strength, endurance, the anaerobic reserve, and also how much help can the climbing specific aerobic system contribute as well. So shout out to Alex for another incredible send. And that covers, checks that box, the shout out for this episode. I see some of you are typing in questions, and each Training Cafe I do field some questions on training and climbing and nutrition and mental training and injury, you name it. If you have something you want to ask me, I'll do my best to answer it. And if I can't answer it, I'll be honest about that and tell you I can't answer it, or try to refer you to someone who can. Because I've been in this industry a long time, know a lot of doctors and researchers and people smarter than me that can help out, or kind of my go-to people when I'm exploring a new topic and trying to bring something new to climbing training, which has been my passion the last 30 years or so. Okay, so let's just do a 5 or 10 minute discussion of kind of this end of season analysis. And this is more of the stuff of a pro athlete. If you're an Olympic athlete, or, pro football or baseball player or pro climber, it's your job. And, so you're taking it hopefully serious enough that you're constantly reflecting and analyzing where you've been and what you can do better. What are your weaknesses? Do you have an Achilles heel? how can you improve your game for next season to keep the arc going, or just to sustain your career if you're a paid professional athlete. But even for recreational climbers, folks that take it seriously, like you know, if you're watching Training Café, well, then you take climbing pretty seriously and are probably trying to do things right, you know, in the gym and in terms of recovery and nutrition. And, you know, when you get to the crag, you're trying to be smart on how you invest your energy. And so assessment and planning is a big part of it. So for me personally, I just finished up my outdoor climbing season. I came back from the Red River Gorge on Thursday, and my last real climbing day there was Wednesday, which was kind of a training at the crag day because I set my kind of last project. I guess I should tell you it worked out perfectly for me in that my hardest climb of this season was an ascent I did this past Tuesday. So like kind of my end of my outdoor climbing season ended with a great event, you know, kind of like winning the Super Bowl, the last game of the season type thing. And the route I did at the Red River Gorge is called Bohica, which is a 8A route, you know, 513B, which in the grand scheme of things, you know, to Andra and Megos, that would be like a warm-up route totally for them. For most climbers, it's a pretty hard route. And certainly for the old climbing coach here, it's a pretty hard route. And so it took me just a couple of days of work. I think I put in 4 or 5 kind of beta burns to get efficient. So I could, it's a big cave route. You know, the crux of it is, you know, 45 feet of cave climbing, you know, 40 feet of vertical 512 climbing, and then it goes out a cave and gets pumpy real fast. And so it is kind of a test of strength endurance, anaerobic endurance. And that's something I've been training a lot, and, you know, kind of more or less my wheelhouse these days is those more sustained routes that don't have individual hard crux moves on them, but you have to do a lot of climbing and be very efficient and be quick and stealthy and not make any errors in your tactics, your climbing approach. So, you know, I finished up the season with that send of Bohica. So that kind of gives me a good ending, especially, you know, kind of reflecting on the season as a whole. I came out of last winter. Actually, I ended last season with a little bit of an A2 pulley tweak, not a tear, nothing that was like shutting me down, but something that caused me last winter to train more carefully, to not do any campus training, be very careful with doing any, you know, intense bouldering. You know, I was trying to train in a way that was controlled and would encourage healing of that A2 pulley. And even as I went into the spring season, my first climbing trip of the spring season was a few weeks out in the Utah Hills in March and April. And even on that trip, I did send a couple of 13A routes, but I was climbing cautiously. I continued to wear a ring splint to support the A2 pulley. So just to be sure that it was healing properly. So I kind of had a cautious start to the season. And even, you know, my summer season, you know, we climbed in Wyoming and in Colorado. I was favoring more kind of endurance routes at Rifle versus tweaky power routes at Wild Iris. Just, again, not wanting to re-injure my finger. You know, I'm an older climber. You know, we always talk about how, you know, older climbers recover more slowly and are perhaps more injury prone for various reasons. And for me at age 57, going on 58 here very soon, it's like every season is precious, you know, because the time frame is shrinking. You know, if you're 20 or 30 years old, you have decades ahead of you to climb at a high level if you stay motivated and, you know, uninjured. You know, you have a really long horizon, barring anything unexpected. But when you're 57, you might have, if you're lucky, 5-10 years, hopefully more than that if I do everything right. Maybe I can break some new ground for old guy climbing. But, you know, I have to be more prudent and cautious when it comes to climbing with a tweak or injury, just not putting myself in a position where I get injured and can't climb and lose a whole season, because that's a big loss. And so hopefully all of you, are trying to be more self-aware when it comes to aches and pains, and to be more proactive when you have those first signs of some pain, rather than holding off and trying to climb through it and then getting shut down for a few months more. So in any case, slow start to the season, but I finished strong. I finished healthy. This winter, I'm heading into my winter training season totally healthy. My fingers, I have a few skin issues, but in terms of connective tissue and muscles and joints, I'm feeling great. So that's a real positive for me heading in to the postseason. And just kind of finishing up the assessment side of things, reflecting on my season, my hardest routes were more endurance type climbs. But if I do want to, hopefully next season, maybe climb 13C, 13D, to do that, I have to be able to climb some harder moves. So looking ahead, goals this winter, I have a real strong grip. It's not my grip that's holding me back from climbing that next grade. In my case, I think it's more core strength endurance, being able to climb steep, powerful, core intensive moves, not just one or two moves, but being able to do 10 moves that are very powerful, core intensive. Long resistance routes, you tend to be very relaxed and your core doesn't work the same way as it does on hard bouldery routes, or powerful sport climbs where you're always bearing down and there's this strength endurance requirement of your core muscles. And also all the supporting cast through your shoulders, being able to squeeze hard. And that stuff you develop through bouldering, which I haven't done much of in recent years. And so looking ahead to this winter, one of my plans is to do a bouldering day or two in the gym mostly, where I can be very controlled about it and not be obsessing on sending, but just trying to boulder and be more powerful and develop some of that strength endurance through my core and shoulders, in a very climbing specific way that you can't get from lifting weights or whatever. Try to do it, but without getting injured, so that'll be the challenge for me this winter. So core and bouldering are kind of my two missions. And then all the while trying to maintain my grip strength, which is really, really good for my age. According to the Lattice database, if you do the Lattice training, 20 millimeter edge, and test yourself for grip strength, and, enter it into their database and look at what they have. My grip strength, according to the database, I'm strong enough to climb perhaps 514A, 8B plus, and maybe boulder V10. But those are grades I've never done. And so that just goes to show that climbing is more than grip strength. A lot of climbers are obsessing on the grip strength, but there's so much more. Obviously your movement and your mind, and then, as I said, the core. You need, in climbing hard, steep routes, you have to connect small hands to small feet, and you do that most efficiently by having a steely core. If you have a spaghetti noodle core, then you can't hold on small hands and feet. So if you're someone who gets on steep routes and you feel strong, but yet your feet keep coming off, it's your core strength. And perhaps, footwork's the issue, but I think it's core strength more than anything, because you can't connect the hands and feet in a very steely way. And so I need to be better at that. And so those are the things I'm going to work at. So, again, kind of postseason, reflect, find some positive aspects to your season that you can feel like you hopefully reach some goals, which I did. I finished the season with my hardest ascent, but then also look for areas of improvement and what you can do in the coming months. I think, one of the worst things is, let's say your climbing season is ending about now. Here in the United States, it's Thanksgiving week ahead. A lot of people will be going to Thanksgiving dinners and hanging out with family. Maybe some folks are going on climbing trips, and that's awesome if you have the weather to do that. But for a lot of folks, that's not the case. And this is kind of the end of the outdoor climbing season and the beginning of being indoors for a few months as it gets cold and snowy outside. And so if that's you, then just don't shut it down for 3 months. Don't just go to the gym and hang out or just randomly climb. Have a system, have a plan. Now, you could take a couple weeks off now. Certainly if you have a tweak, an ache, or a pain, it's good to shut it down, or at least to maybe go into rehab mode for a few weeks and try to get through that. But then at some point in December, or at the very latest, the beginning of January, you should probably try to get a training block in. Now, I have a short trip to Vegas in early January, so I'm actually going to do kind of a mini training block. Since I'm healthy and feeling good right now, I'm going to do a mini training block, kind of a 6-week block now, and then that'll lead me up to the Vegas trip. Or maybe I will do a little bit of outdoor bouldering. I'll take a rope along as well. And then when I return from that trip, do maybe another 6-week block. And if all goes well and the weather, warms, I'm outside again, beginning around, the beginning of March. So develop a game plan, and just don't go through your winter and say, I'll get stoked and I'll dial things in next year. It is good to have a bit of an off season, to let your mind rest and to not have to be rigorous with your training all the time. And so I'm taking kind of that, little bit of a break here, Thanksgiving week. And if I put on a pound or two in the next week or two, not a big deal. It's kind of training weight. But I'll also try to reel things back in and get back into performance climbing shape by next March, in terms of my body weight and strength to weight ratio. Try to get everything back kind of on point by March 1st. So have a plan, have a timeline. And I guess the final thing I'll say is, as best as you can, try to imagine what your 2022 season might look like in terms of when you could have significant trips, a summer trip, or if you're in college, maybe you have a spring break, a summer, and then a fall break. And, the further you can plan into the future, the better. I think you can be sure that way that you have some good trips and that you can attain some of your goals. Whereas if you just kind of make it up and live your life month to month, you might have some effective weekend warrioring, but you'll probably miss out on the opportunities maybe for some bigger achievements, road trips, or, traveling to Europe for a few weeks in the summer, or something that really requires planning 3, 6, 9 months in advance. And so that's something I'll be doing here in December, is trying to plan out my 2022 around my work schedule, and trying to have a few trips maybe where I can climb with my sons, and a few trips where it's my wife and I going out and climbing on our own. And again, I take every climbing season as a gift that I have to try to make the most of, because how many seasons does the old climbing coach have left? It's hard to say, but I hope it's a lot. Okay, so enough on the main topic there. Let's get to some of your questions here. And I see quite a few blended in, including John from Scotland. So welcome, John. Okay, first up, question. I recently started writing a training log. Any tips? What are you writing in yours? Well, I saw that question entered in a little while ago before I started this episode. And so I brought up from my basement climbing gym my log. And yeah, I'm old school. I still keep a written log. I know a lot of coaches and a lot of climbers now do everything electronically. And I do certain things that way if I'm doing testing on a laptop or whatnot. But for my own personal training, I've been doing it for decades. I mean, literally dating back to the 1980s when I was in high school and college, keeping just a spiral notebook. I would walk into the I'd walk into the bookstore at Penn State and buy spiral notebooks for a class, and I would have one for my training notes. And I've been doing it most of the time ever since. And all these years, I have a system, a way of writing down for individual workouts. Here I have, just a very easy, stretching and lifting workout on Friday. That was when I got back from the Red River Gorge. Actually, up here, I kind of summarized my Red River Gorge trip, you know, the 4 big sends: Prometheus Unbound 13A, Bundle of Joy 13A, 40 Ounces of Justice 13A, Bohica 13B. So that's kind of what I did, you know, my 4 hardest routes when I was at the Red. So I kind of, you know, it's nice to put that in with the training. I don't list everything, but just the key points to kind of have a record of what I did and how I was performing in a certain period of time. And then when I return from the trip, I usually have a couple of easier workouts. You know, again, this one was stretching and lifting and nothing crazy, a little bit of deadlifting, a little bit of shoulders, a little bit of ham glute and QL, you know, lower back kind of stuff. Saturday, which is 2 days ago, I did about half of my typical strength power workout. And so in case you're wondering, in the morning, I just did a kind of a stretching and, you know, extended warm up just to loosen up my body. That's good to do post trip or, you know, after even a weekend trip, let alone a couple of weeks like I had at the Red. You know, I was still feeling a little sore. And so doing mobility work and stretching and soft tissue management, foam rolling, those types of things are great to do. So on Saturday, I spent probably 45 minutes in the morning just doing that kind of stuff as kind of my morning session. And then in the afternoon, I did, as I said, kind of half of my strength power workout. So as a warm up, I did 5 bodyweight pull-ups. Then I did 5 wide grip pull-ups. Then I did 5 pull-ups with 50 pounds on my body. And so that kind of, you know, gets me warmed up progressively. I ended up doing 3 more sets of weighted pull-ups, 5 reps with 60 pounds hanging from a harness, 5 reps from 70 pounds, and then 4 reps with 80 pounds, which is half of my body weight hanging from my harness. So that was kind of for me, a moderate workout for my large pulling muscles. I also did some hangs. I started off with 4 sets of repeaters, 7-3 repeaters, where you do that 6 times in a row. It takes 1 minute to train. I did 4 sets of that, 2 sets at body weight, then a set with plus 20 added to my body, and a set with plus 30 added to my body. And those sets I do half crimp, pocket, half crimp, pocket. Again, I kind of have my own unique way of doing these things. So again, that was just kind of more of a finger warm up for me as a more advanced climber. You know, if you're a beginner climber, that could be a whole finger workout. You know, that's probably quite a bit. But you know, more advanced, well-trained climbers need to have higher capacity of training. You know, do more volume in the right ways, in valuable ways. It's just not mindless volume, but doing the right things at the right times and the right amounts. And so then I went on to doing 2 sets of weighted hangs, and I use the 753 protocol, where you do 7-second hang, 53-second rest, 7-second hang, 53-second rest, 7-second hang, 53-second rest. So that's 3 7-second hangs with just a brief 53-second rest. That's 1 set. It's a really good advanced strength, grip strength protocol that I developed. It's in my Training for Climbing book. Then you rest 4 or 5 minutes. You get kind of a complete recovery. And then I did a second set of that. And I did both sets with 60 pounds on my harness. And I use the 14 millimeter transgression hold. That's my preferred hold for doing this particular workout. And then I did a set of pinch block training, standing up with pinch block at myself. I do 7 seconds, and then I alternate sides, 7 seconds, 7 seconds, and I do that 6 times. I did it with 40 pounds on the pinch block. And then I did a light campus workout, just kind of some 1, 3, 5, 7 laddering, just up and then jumping off, no down work. Again, this is more just to kind of, you know, get back in the groove after climbing for a couple of weeks. And then at the end of the workout, kind of my last thing, just to get a little bit of a pump going, I did 5 2-minute sets on the treadmill. And so my protocol for this is 2 minutes on, 4 minutes off. So the rest is double the training time. And you could do it on your home bouldering wall by doing circuits. You know, 2-minute circuit, rest 4 minutes, 2-minute circuit, rest 4 minutes. So the 2-minute circuit, you're going to be getting pumped. You know, for me, I get kind of 9 out of 10 pumped. I don't do it so that I fail in 2 minutes or under 2 minutes. I select holds that make me work, but allow me to avoid failure. That's a better way to train, especially if you want to continue to grow your aerobic energy system, your climbing specific aerobic energy system, while at the same time working out, that anaerobic system. And so those 2 minute burns with 4 minute recovery, I did 5 of those. And so that's fairly grueling, but again, it's not going to the limit. It's not taking me to failure. So I'm not getting super acidy. So that was my Saturday workout. And yesterday I did a split workout yesterday, kind of a 2-part workout. Again, not my full workout because I'm still kind of coming back from the trip, seeing where I'm at. In fact, on my Saturday workout, if you see right here, I wrote not 100%, okay, after trip, feeling weak. So I have a lot of these subjective notes in here, along with the data, the training data, subjective notes. How do you feel? Some days, if I flip back through the book, I'll see days that, I'm doing PRs on certain, climbing exercises, or I feel good on the treadmill, have incredible endurance. And I'll make notes of that. I'll say, felt great, awesome, 100%. And then when you see that, I can look back to over the past week and see what led me to that point. Like maybe I took 2 rest days, when I normally don't take 2 rest days. Or maybe I switched up my training in some way, and then I'm seeing here, wow, I had a really amazing workout, and that's some of the detective work you can do if you have a really detailed notebook, not just the data from the workout, but subjective information. If you do any testing, grip strength testing, which I only recommend doing once a month, not daily. That's kind of stupid because all you see is noise if you do it daily. But if you take a 2-day rest and then test yourself and do that once a month, then you kind of have more reliable benchmarks. But in any case, this allows you to come up with some causal connections, workouts to how you feel, to how you perform, or what led you to injury or what led you to feeling bad. You page back. And sometimes I go through about, one of these notebooks lasts me about 1.5 years. So I have a stack of these notebooks, and very frequently I'll be thinking back to a past season and like when I did a certain route or felt a certain way, or was coming back from a previous A2 pulley injury, I'll go back and flip through those notebooks and see what I did, how quick I came back. So you have this wealth of data to go back and look at and gather. And it's because it's written and you can be more subjective. It's not like just going to your app and saying, oh, well, this is how many sets I did on a hangboard or how many sets of repeaters I did. That's just raw data, and that's fine, but the notebook can potentially add a lot to that. Okay, so there's a super long question to an answer about training logs. And by the way, I also occasionally keep notes on my body weight, my body fat, if I do a skin fold caliber test. But again, that's infrequent, maybe a once a month or once a season type thing. Okay, question says he is already taking collagen pre-workout, pre-climbing, which is ideal. You feed connective tissues before you train. You feed muscles after you train. And so his question is there any reason to supplement with EAAs, essential amino acids, or even BCAAs? And there's some controversy. The research is kind of equivocal as to whether supplementing with BCAAs and EAAs are of benefit. Certainly post-workout, you want to have a complete protein like a whey protein or a high-quality plant protein or a meal that has high-quality protein. All of those would supply you with the full array of amino acids for recovery. The whey protein shake, probably the best option because it has the highest concentration of BCAAs, and in particular leucine, which is an amino acid that helps turn on, mTOR, to help you be more anabolic post-workout for recovery. And so collagen-specific amino acids pre-workout, whey protein post-workout. In terms of supplementing with the EAAs or BCAAs, perhaps the best time to do something like that is in the middle of a really long workout or long day of climbing. If you're, let's say it's a Saturday and you're going to a climbing gym for 5 hours and you're going to do a lot of volume, really work your muscles to a high level of fatigue, or you're going to the crag and doing the same thing. Well, then obviously having some appropriate snacks would be helpful. But if you don't like to eat a lot, which I generally don't eat a lot when I'm climbing, I prefer the feeling of not being full, having stuff in my belly. And that's where having in your water some essential amino acids or BCAAs. PhysiVantage, we have a product called Flow, which is actually vegan branched chain amino acids and electrolytes. So it's kind of two supplements in one. The electrolytes and the BCAAs are both beneficial for supporting long workouts or long days of climbing. But in terms of EAAs, pre-workout or post-workout, no. I think there are other things that are better. Okay, Michael says, can you tell me something about muscle aching the day after hard training? What causes the pain? Is it harmful? Should it be avoided? Certainly some muscle stiffness or tightness. I often do this as a test, stretch my forearms, and, after a hard day of climbing or training, I'll feel tightness there, maybe some soreness. That is normal stuff, from a hard workout. If you have more acute muscle soreness, or, in the worst case, pain like in your elbow joint near the epicondyle, or pain in your, there's no muscles in your fingers. So if you feel pain in your fingers, then it's connective tissues. That's bad. And so you need to take a few days off at the minimum. But just standard muscle pain is part of the ball game. That's part of what is going on. What causes it? Well, the old, bro science was it's, micro muscle tears, and perhaps that's some of it. But the latest research is actually there are collagen scaffolds that run through your muscles that gather the force that the contractile fibers generate. And those collagen scaffolds transmit the force, kind of like a transmission, to the tendon, which then, of course, connects to the bone and allows you to grip your fingers. And so there's some evidence that it's these connective tissues, the extracellular matrix inside the muscle, these collagen scaffolds, the fascia that surrounds the muscles, that get micro tears, and there can be some calcium leak and things like that that create edema and stiffness and swelling. And that's kind of that more classic delayed onset muscle soreness that actually is usually worse 2 days after training. If you're a little sore one day after training and then you're all better the next day, that's normal. If you have worse pain 2 days after training, then that's the more disruptive delayed onset muscle soreness, which again is part of the game. Hard training athletes are going to have episodes of that, but it shouldn't be the normal, it shouldn't be your normal MO. If you're always having that severe day 2 delayed onset muscle soreness, then you're overtraining. Should not be a constant. But again, stretching, foam rolling, I'm not sure it accelerates things, but it sure makes you feel better. There's a, therapeutic effect, at least how you feel. Protein is, of course, helpful, water, and being somewhat active on your rest days, kind of those recovery workouts where you do easy exercise, stretching, yoga, some easy climbing. All those things does increase the circulation to those sore muscles and help spur on the recovery process. Okay, Cosmo Steve says, hello, coach. I dislocated my kneecap yesterday. Do you have any general or specific tips for recovery, rehab, keeping my fitness during the next week's healing? Well, I'm not a medical doctor, and so I can't really help you with the rehab. I don't know what the exact nature of your injury is. Some dislocations have can be impactful in a bad way, in terms of connective tissue, ligament tears. In the case of a kneecap, maybe the meniscus being torn a little bit. It's all speculation. It's unknowable for me, and you would need to see a doctor. Certainly if the pain persists, you want to see a doctor. Maybe it's very minor, and it's something that is a non-issue 2 weeks from now. In any case, I would focus obviously on upper body training, core training. Be a good time to do a few hangboard workouts, maybe 3 a week. Do core 5 days a week, but not do anything too rigorous on that knee. Probably climbing wouldn't be a good idea on that knee for the time being. But most important is see a doctor or PT if you continue to have pain, and certainly if you want rehab guidance, a PT is the way to go. Okay, next up, hi from Chile. How many strength and endurance training sessions per week do you recommend to an 8A climber with full work days? I usually train 2 days per week, early in the day and in the afternoon. I'm not sure. Maybe is that 2 days a week with a morning and an afternoon workout? That's kind of how I interpret that. And then one on, is that weekend? So I'm not exactly sure the details here, but 8A climber, that's pretty high level. I mean, that's kind of, where I'm at, so it's not the highest level, far from it. But, to be at that level, you have to train fairly hard. And I am a fan of doing 2-a-day workouts a couple of days a week. You can't do it 5 days a week. That would be 10 workouts in 5 days. That's too much. But if you, have 2 main training days to work around your life, then doing a morning and an evening workout is a good way to do it. They should train different energy systems, have different goals and purposes, and not just repeat the same thing. And then, your weekend workout, try to do some actual climbing if you can outside, or in the gym, try to make it more focused on climbing rather than training. So for an 8A climber, I mean, it kind of sounds like it's okay, but without talking specific exercises and how many sets and how much weight you're adding and doing, it's, and even, if you gave me 10 8A climbers, they would need 10 different workouts. So it's not like there's just a cookie cutter workout you can give for somebody that climbs 513, because everybody still needs to have a personalized program, in my opinion. Okay, Douglas, in terms of weight to strength or strength to weight ratio, do you have an ideal BMI range? I'm currently 22.1 BMI, leaning towards working on dropping 7 pounds, focusing more on strength training. Currently 5'11", 158. The BMI just isn't helpful, in my opinion, with climbers. It can be very deceptive, taking different body types and different, physiques. To be honest, I never look at BMIs. I look at, more measurements. Ape index, you mentioned your 5'11", 158, which off the top of my head sounds like a pretty good weight for that height. It's not gaunt. It's certainly not bulky. That's pretty close to where I am. I'm about 5'11 and a half and 160. Now, even if you and I weigh and are the same height, our bodies can still be shaped differently. One of us might have more bulk in the lower body and one more bulk in the upper body. Of course, it's ideal to have more bulk in the upper body and less in the lower body, because leg strength, like squatting strength, is never a limiting constraint on hard boulders and sport climbs, whereas upper body strength and power certainly is. So weight distribution is important, which is another reason BMI isn't a good tool for climbers. So really, each climber has to be treated uniquely and assessed uniquely, kind of a snowflake principle that no two of us are the same. And so I don't have much to say there. Dropping 7 pounds, boy, that could be a stretch. That would put you down at 151. I mean, I can't imagine myself cutting 7 pounds. I would have to starve myself, and I'm not going to do that, and we shouldn't do that, because it's no way to live, and you end up getting injured when you are protein deficient and energy deficient for a long time. You can train in ways that you're energy deficient for short bursts to drop a couple pounds for competition or a red point, and most pro athletes do that, but long term it's not sustainable. Okay, do you think isometrics are best for tendon strength and health? Yes on the health, no on the strength. Isometric training is what PTs give you if you have a tendon injury. Heavy isometrics, long duration isometrics, or even very slow, heavy eccentrics, they make for healthier tendons. It breaks cross links. It makes the tendon a bit more compliant and injury resistant, and helps give the signal for healing so that the tenocytes align the collagen and remodel properly. But for performance and for stiffness, which, a stiffer tendon is a higher performing tendon, and you actually reduce stiffness if you do a lot of eccentric training or a lot of isometric training, either one of those. Whereas when you do a lot of quick training, like plyometric type training, that is actually what makes a tendon more stiff and higher performing, which is, why sprinters do box jumping and plyo jumping and those types of jumping exercises, especially heading into competition season. They reduce the heavy weight work and ramp up the plyometric work. And climbers should do the same. If you're doing a lot of isometric training for strength building purposes or heavy load training for strength development, hangboarding, weighted pull-ups, things like that, as you transition into your climbing season, you want to do less of that and do more plyometric type things at body weight, which gives a stimulus for cross-linking of the collagen fibrils. So you're adding more stiffness to the system when you do that. And that gives you a higher performing tendon that has a higher rate of force development. It's more efficient in transmitting energy, so you get more force to your fingers with less energy lost through a compliant tendon. There's a lot of good science on this that I've been trying to communicate the last few years, and a few others have as well. And sometimes it gets oversimplified. And so there's a difference between training for tendon health and training for tendon performance. They're really two different protocols that need to be explained properly and coached and executed properly. I did a series of podcasts on this. It must be almost 3 years ago now. It was back around the time when I started PhysiVantage. I was really immersed in all the research on connective tissues and the use of training and nutrition to support connective tissue health and adaptations. That's the supercharged collagen that PhysiVantage makes that's gone wild and has been very beneficial to thousands of climbers around the world, was born out of that research and out of that period. And if you go back to my podcast from like 3 years ago, you'll find 3 or 4 of them on connective tissue health and training that really, I think, still gives kind of the state of the art on the subject. Something that you might see on your phone in an Instagram post, how much quality information can you put into a sentence or two or a photo caption? And that's where sometimes these complex topics get oversimplified. Okay, Greg. Whoops, lost you there, Greg. Thanks for your guidance with the one-arm 753s. Okay, yeah, I guess Greg previously asked me about going from 2-arm hangboard training to 1-arm. And if you can train with, like in my case, I'm right at the cusp of being able to switch to 1-arm training because I can train at about half my body weight. If I'm on a hangboard at a body weight of 160, I can do hangs with 80 pounds on. Going much more than 80 pounds, and sometimes I'll go up to 100 pounds, but it just gets to be too much weight to deal with to hang on your harness and stuff. And at that point, you're better off just switching to 1-arm training at body weight or plus or minus 10 pounds of body weight using a pulley system or some added weights. And so I guess I had helped Greg make that transition. And for a real strong climber making gains, you want to eventually go that way. Many climbers, they're not there yet. So you want to stay with the 2-arm training, which is more controlled. Keep your shoulders, engaged. No loose shoulder training. That will wreck your shoulders. If not sooner, it will later, so you need to train with proper technique. That's always important. Okay, Connor says, hey, Eric, can you explain the difference in training outcome between 7 3 repeaters? So that's a 7-second hang, 3-second recovery. Typically, you do 6 of those right one after another. So it takes exactly 1 minute before you then take a rest break. He's saying doing those 7 3 repeaters with either A, added weight and a 3-minute rest between sets, or 2, body weight with a 1-minute rest between sets. And yes, the difference is relates to energy systems. Doing the sets with just a 1-minute rest, by necessity, you'll be training at body weight or maybe even a little bit less than body weight if you're in a small hold. Or if you're adding a tiny bit of weight, maybe you use a slightly bigger hold. But in any case, 1 minute of training, 1 minute recovery, and doing 10 or 20 of those in a row really targets the climbing specific aerobic energy system. So you're having a lot of blood flow, especially during that 1 minute break. The blood is flowing, bringing fresh oxygen. The mitochondria are really working hard during those recovery periods. The training periods aren't so intense because you're at body weight or maybe less than body weight, that you're not even necessarily occluding blood flow during your hangs. So by having more oxygen available, it's ideal for training that climbing specific aerobic energy system, which is important for all climbers, but it's most important for route climbers. So when I'm doing repeaters, that's usually like if I'm doing 10 or 20 sets of repeaters, I'm doing 1 on, 1 off, just like you outlined, because I'm more of a route climber. Doing them with a little bit of added weight, but just doing 1 set of repeaters and then resting for 3 or 5 minutes, that's a strength endurance protocol, because you will be occluding blood flow during the hangs because you've added weight, or maybe you're using a smaller holder, maybe you're training on pockets. You're trying to make those 1 minute sets of repeaters pretty intense. And maybe you're failing right at the end, on the 6th hang, you're failing. So then you need 3 minutes of recovery, or 4 minutes, or 5 minutes of recovery. And so the oxidative system is involved. That all recovery is the aerobic energy system. But during the training block, you are creating more lactate, more hydrogen ions. There's more intercellular acidosis. I mean, this is really the stuff of anaerobic lactic energy system training. And so, that protocol that you described is more that lactic system training. And just to finish this thought up, if you're doing max hangs where you hang for just 10 or 12 seconds and rest for 3 minutes, or if you're doing the 753 protocol where you do that 3 times, those are max strength protocols, and they train more the anaerobic alactic system. So those workouts, because the hangs are brief, the recoveries are long, you're not generating much lactate at all and very little acidosis. And so those are pure, max strength protocols that are alactic. So you need to distinguish between anaerobic alactic and anaerobic lactic. And then, of course, you have the aerobic workouts, which are more those lower intensity, more persistent repeating protocols, like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, as you described there. So yes, they're all distinctly different, and understanding what is going on is so crucial so that you're training them properly. You wouldn't want to do that aerobic energy system repeater workout at the end of a bouldering session. A bouldering session is anaerobic, so you want to train by energy system. If you're doing a route climbing session, or if there's a day that you wanted to route climb but you're not, and you wanted to simulate route climbing, well, then the repeaters 1 minute on, 1 minute off is a great way to simulate it. And so there is some climbing science. And again, I have a series of podcasts on energy system training that really gets into the nuts and bolts of all that. So, go to your phone and or Spotify and subscribe to the Training for Climbing podcast, and you'll find all that stuff. Thank you, David. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all my American climbing friends here. Appreciate that. Been going 50 minutes. I'd like to wrap this up at 1 o'clock. So let's try to fly through these last few questions and see if Coach Hörst can be a little less long-winded here. on the answers. Okay, sounds like this question is from a boulderer. Weighted max hangs twice a week on a half crimp, alternating between 20 and 15 millimeters every 4 to 5 weeks. How should I add grip type / edge variance via training, not climbing? More sets on top, 3rd session. Max weighted hangs, I am not a fan of doing 3 days a week unless you're doing no other climbing at all. If you are doing some climbing in the gym, if you're, let's say you're a weekend climber in the gym, then maybe you're just, then just 2 of these a week, or even 1 if you're doing quite a bit of climbing. But I think 2 is a good number. For people getting into max weight training, I do recommend initially just targeting the half crimp and then expanding to doing like 3-finger drag. The muscles that flex the PIP joint and DIP joint are distinctly different. The deep flexor muscle, the flexor digitorum profundus, flexes the last joint that is used especially in crimping, whereas the open hand grip is more the superficial muscle that flexes the PIP joint. Though, the muscles are contributing either way, but the ratios that they're contributing are quite different. And so you need to train this, but you also need to train this. And by the way, not a thumb lock when you're training on a hangboard. But ultimately, yes, you do want to start throwing in some pocket grips, and mixing things up, more advanced protocols. And you just can't do 100 sets and hit all the grips, all the permutations. It would be too much. So I don't want to add a 3rd session, as we discussed. I do want to add a few more sets, but not get carried away. And so, maybe if you're doing a total of 5 sets of weighted hangs, you do a half crimp set, an open hand set, and then maybe you do, pick, your 2 main pocket teams, front 2, middle 2, and do a set. If you're strong enough to do monos, maybe you mix in a mono set every now and then finish back up with another half crimp and another drag. Or you could do it by workout. One workout you're going to focus on, half crimp and, open crimp. And then the next workout, you're going to focus on drags and the different 2-finger pocket teams. You have to be creative, but, if you're doing weighted hangs, you just can't do, 20 sets like you could in doing bodyweight repeaters. It would just be way too much. You would really break down connective tissues and set yourself up for potential injury of a flexor tendon or a pulley at some point. Okay. Alex says, I start climbing since a month. I climb V2 to V3 boulders. I'm very light. Should I start hangboarding on 3 or 4 centimeter edge? If you're this new to climbing, you've only been doing it a month, I'm not a fan of hangboarding, to be honest. Now, 3 to 4 centimeter edge is pretty big. That's a big 2-pad hold. So I'm not saying you couldn't toy around on it, but if you then let things escalate and get onto smaller holds and pockets and things like that, totally inappropriate for a climber of 1 month. You should be learning to climb. V2, V3 is, pretty hard for only being a month into things. You're light, that's good. You do need to develop strength. You need to develop stability. So as important, I think the first training you should actually add to supplement your bouldering is to do some antagonist muscle work. Push-ups, maybe some dumbbell shoulder presses, maybe some dips, rotator cuff. That is to support this, you're climbing, you're training the finger flexors, you're training the pulling muscles, you're training your core enough as a beginner just from climbing a few days a week. But what you're not training is, the wrist extensors as much. So you could do some dumbbell reverse wrist curls and, the shoulder muscles, the push muscles, those antagonist muscles. That's the type of thing you should be adding in 2 or 3 days a week. You don't want to do CrossFit, bodybuilding workouts, nothing like that. But if you check out my book, trainingforclimbing.com, or visit my website, view some of my videos on antagonist training. You'll find some useful guidance on just some of the basics you can do. And what this does is makes your body more bulletproof so that you can climb harder without injury. A lot of enthusiastic beginners end up getting injured 6 months or a year or 2 years into it because they just went all in on climbing, not enough recovery, not enough antagonist training, and they lose the muscle balance and end up injured and, sadly, in some cases, drop out of the sport, and so they miss out on a long life of climbing. Down to 5 minutes. Let's see if we can get through these last few questions here. Last 2 questions. Matt says, I was planning on ending my season this week, but I'm really close to sending my first 13A. I've ended all training. I just focused on climbing for 2 weeks. Do you think it's better to train on the route, train on a replica boulder, or end season? Well, if you're close to sending it, I think you should try to polish it off. If the weather is going to work, if it's nearby so you can get a couple more days in on it. If you've only worked on it, now, is it a project that you've worked on a day or two, or is it a project you've got 10 sessions in on? If it's just a day or 2 or 3, well, then going and training on the route, just through improving your efficiency, you may be able to send it pretty quick, in the next session or 2. If you already have 10 sessions in and 20 goes in, well, then you've gone through most of the efficiency gains. Research shows that like your 10 first goes, you keep improving efficiency. After about 10 goes, then there's much less gain in efficiency. You need to be a better climber or a stronger climber to send at that point. In which case, maybe you should end the season and just, train with it in mind and go back and send it at the start of the next season. But if you've only had a few sessions in, I would say go back and train on the route, get efficient enough that you can send it. Certainly a simulator boulder could be helpful if you can, design that at home to get that movement specific training, maybe develop some specific strength over just a short, week or 2. Maybe you can gain a little bit of something that can make a difference on the route. But I guess it just really depends on how close you are and how much time you have in on it. And if you're close with only a few sessions in, I think you can go back and send it. If you're close with 10 sessions in, well, it might, close sometimes isn't so close when you have that many sessions in. So it really does depend. Hopefully that helped out a little bit there, Matt. Steve, I'm curious. He asks, I'm curious as to how many sizes to go down on La Sportivas, particularly soft shoes. Yeah, that's a tough one. I go down 3 sizes. So like my La Sportiva approach shoes are size 46, and my La Sportiva sport climbing shoes are size 43 solutions, or Testarossas, depending on the route. If I'm trad climbing, then I only go down 2 sizes. So if you're on a multi-pitch route, a vertical route where you're standing around on ledges a lot, then I would only recommend going down 2 sizes. The caveat here is everybody's foot is different. La Sportiva shoes fit my feet perfectly. I've been wearing La Sportiva for 30 years. I can't imagine wearing a different shoe because they do fit me so perfectly. And for people that have, a foot shaped like the shoe, often you can downsize even more. I mean, Andra is notoriously downsized like 4 or 5 sizes for hard sport climbing. My sons, who grew up wearing climbing shoes, grew up wearing Sportiva shoes since they were little kids, their feet have actually been shaped by wearing climbing shoes for the last 15 years. And so they have to size down a lot more. If you get into climbing at age 30 and you've never been in a climbing shoe before, no way are you going to size down 3 sizes. So there's a lot of variables there, but that's my advice. But it is very personalized. Okay, here are a book recommendation about biological transmutation. Like me to take a look at. So yeah, I do a lot of research and reading. I tend to gravitate more towards peer-reviewed research rather than books, which can be a blend of anecdote and research, which is what my books are, you know, so I'm not knocking it. Hamaz asks thoughts on hangboarding with a strict 90-degree half crimp versus a chisel grip, i.e. open index finger. Yeah, I mean, I think you need to train both, at least for more advanced climbers. Again, somebody just beginning hangboard training, you want to only do a few sets, so you can't train all these different grip positions. And I would say more of a strict half crimp would be the way to go. As you start to add a few more sets and some variety to it, absolutely kind of that open crimp where the two middle fingers are at 90 degrees and the index finger and pinky are open. Most people call that an open crimp. You call it a chisel grip. I guess specifically referring to that index finger. But, you know, again, and everybody's finger size is different. You know, my one son has a really short pinky, so it's like his open crimp is his pinky's just hanging off. It's like half. It's, you know, basically the middle two are at 90. The index is open. Maybe that's the chisel grip you're speaking about, and the pinky's off. But in any case, grip strength is very specific. You know, pinch grip is incredibly specific because it comes down to the muscle that contracts this joint of the thumb, which is here in your forearm, completely separate. And then you have the lumbricals in your hand. So, you know, forearm training is a complex thing. Now, again, beginners have to pick just the most primary grips, and they get a lot of training through climbing. But advanced climbers that want to get stronger at specific grips need to do targeted training. Okay. Yeah, he said, this is Matt getting back to me. He's worked on it for 10 sessions. So, yeah, so the gains in efficiency are coming really slow at this point, you know, from here going forward. Maybe you need a little more strength. Maybe you need a little more endurance. Those things could take some time. You know, maybe that winter training block will, I would say, would get you there. Now, sometimes there can be a wild card, like you find a rest that you didn't find before. You find a knee bar, that you find a new move or some new beta. You go back for an 11th session, maybe you'll find that. So I'm not saying no. I mean, you got to do what, you know, I guess if the conditions could be the tiebreaker. If you have ideal conditions, then why not go back to the route? If the conditions suck, then, you know, maybe you're just better off training in the gym and coming back. So, okay, and here's a good one to end on. A thank you for another fantastic podcast. So, yeah, I really appreciate that. If you enjoy these actually, it's not a podcast. It's a vodcast, or it's a live stream coaching video, but I know what you mean. So share it with a friend. I'd really appreciate. These things end up on my Training for Climbing YouTube channel forever, so you can share the link. You can leave a comment after the fact. I'm trying to grow the audience here. My monthly podcast, my actual Training for Climbing podcast, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe on your phone. And it's an hour of very focused content every month with a huge audience, 10 to 20,000 downloads a month. And so I'm trying to grow this. It will probably never be that big. Because it's on demand, it's live, but it's nice to see the audience growing, between 40 and 100 people on any given episode of the Training Cafe. And then, of course, on demand afterwards, people can review these things forever, even after Coach Hörst is gone, I guess. So, or YouTube goes out of business. So in any case, time to wrap things up with a final sip of coffee. Thank you for tuning in to my American viewers. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you either get out on a good climbing trip or have a good day with friends and family. And for the international visitors, well, you have a happy Thursday of thanks as well, even though it's not a holiday in the rest of the world. I appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate your support of Training for Climbing. The PhysiVantage brand Sunblend coffee is now available on our website at PhysiVantage.com. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next episode of Training Cafe. Until then, be safe, be strong, climb on.